Hello, and welcome to my book discussion video for The Case Against Satan by Russel. The reason I chose to read this book is because I am a pretty big fan of The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty and its sequel Legion, and most of the movies and some of the spin-offs. So when I found out about this book and found that it was largely advertised in all of its reprints as being The Exorcist before The Exorcist, I was unable to resist. It is true that this book was written almost a decade before The Exorcist and deals with two Catholic priests performing an exorcism on a young girl who exhibits all the signs of supposed demonic possession. You may wonder, why is this significant? In this case, The Exorcist is often credited as being the godfather of possession subgenre of horror. It's responsible for creating a formula in horror films that has been recycled over and over again for the last 50 years. So the notion that it isn't entirely original either is kind of a big deal. The question is, how true is the claim that The Case Against Satan is The Exorcist before The Exorcist? Frankly, it's pretty true. There are a number of similarities that extend beyond the basic plot. In both books, we have two Catholic priests performing an exorcism on a young girl who is tied to a bed. The three central characters all feel pretty similar as well. So, how did this happen? Did William Peter Blatty rip off Russel? I don't think so. I think what really happened and what explains the similarities is that they were both inspired by the same source material. The Exorcist is well known for being inspired by true events. There are two pretty famous cases of exorcisms being performed in America. Blatty drew heavily from the exorcism of Roland Doe and was directly inspired by a newspaper article titled, "Priest Frees Mount Rainier Boy Reportedly Held in the Devil's Grip." I feel Russel left a little Easter egg in his book. Whether it was consciously or subconsciously, I'm not sure. But one of the priests in The Case Against Satan is named Halloran. The priest who assisted in the exorcism of Roland Doe was named Walter Halloran. In fact, when I made this connection, I got very excited because the light bulb went off and inspired me to do this whole thing. Additionally, an older but equally as important case is mentioned explicitly in The Case Against Satan, both in the story itself and in the footnote by the author. In 1928, there was an exorcism of a young girl in Iowa, and German priest Karl Vogel detailed the true events that transpired in his book, Begone Satan, published in 1935. So, the similarities that The Exorcist shares with The Case Against Satan are not really that mystifying when you consider they both borrowed heavily from the same source material. But that does not make either book less compelling. In fact, it's their differences that really grabbed me, and I'll try to be as spoiler-free as I proceed here. The Case Against Satan is only 140 pages. The Exorcist is just over 400. If stripped to their basic plot, they are strikingly similar, but in the details, two very different stories are being told. There is a character in The Case Against Satan that is very critical of the Catholic Church and prints his conspiracy theories about the crimes of the Church against young children from his print shop. I'd have to do more research, but the claims are pretty serious, and it's surprising to me that Russel would take such open shots at the church in his book from 1962. And yet, the main protagonist explores his faith in a very deep and genuine way throughout this confrontation he has with Satan. So, despite its short length, it has a great deal of three-dimensional nuance. As for the exorcism itself, there is only a short measure of time and a simple test before the elder bishop is absolutely convinced that a potty-mouthed little girl is indeed possessed by Satan. Whereas in The Exorcist, most of the book is spent with Father Karras trying to determine in his mind if Regan is indeed possessed by the devil. In the movie, there is little doubt because all the over-the-top effects, head spinning, and pea soup vomiting. But in the book, it's a very slow and subtle journey of discovery. But there is one key moment where Karras is absolutely certain that he is indeed dealing with the devil. I'm not going to spoil that one for you, though. Although, in both books, there is a process of trying to determine if they are up against the genuine work of the devil, and the doubt of Father Gregory in The Case Against Satan is one of the central themes. However, The Exorcist is much more focused on the supernatural elements at work, and The Case Against Satan reads a bit more like an old-school crime thriller. Needless to say, The Case Against Satan works as a prototype of sorts, and I definitely recommend it. but it feels that Blatty wrote a much deeper and more profound story overall. And that's probably what's given his book so much staying power over the competition. If you're an Exorcist fan, I totally suggest also reading The Case Against Satan.